There's a particular tragedy that stays with me, the story of Anthony White. He was a marine biology student, and so he knew the risks. Yet, on a summer morning in 2014, he paddled out 150 yards from Surf Beach in California. He ignored the warning signs, ignored the nearby seal rookery, and even ignored an eerie silence that fell over the water. Moments later, he was attacked. That summer morning at Surf Beach, the weather was perfect. Sunshine painted the glassy ocean surface with gold. Anthony, just 22, was exactly what you'd picture. A California marine biology student with a passion for surfing. He'd been surfing for 8 years. His friends remember him as both fearless and deeply respectful of the ocean. He had an infectious enthusiasm, and he always researched surf spots and ocean conditions before heading out. He'd spent weeks planning this solo dawn patrol session. It was meant to be the perfect blend of his two loves, surfing and marine biology. Arriving at Surf Beach with the sunrise, he spent an hour checking conditions and waxing his board. But he was restless, telling other early morning surfers that the best waves were further out, even though they were right next to that massive seal rookery at Point Conception. That morning, he carried his shortboard and minimal safety gear. He signed the beach access log, saying he'd surf the main break. But somewhere along the way, he saw what looked like perfect waves breaking offshore. Despite the warning signs about marine life, he paddled out 150 yards. The area was beautiful, almost too beautiful, with seals barking in the distance and crystal clear water showing the sandy bottom. As he waited for the perfect wave, he noticed something alarming. The water was unusually quiet. No other surfers were around, and the seals had stopped chattering. But he was so focused on the wave that he ignored these warnings. He positioned himself perfectly, legs dangling in the water. Then a terrifying silence fell. Out of nowhere, a massive great white shark emerged from the depths, just 20 feet below. He had entered the domain of one of nature's most efficient predators. Great whites are living fossils, virtually unchanged for millions of years. Their torpedo-shaped bodies are perfectly designed for explosive attacks. These apex predators can detect blood from up to 500 yards away and sense the electrical impulses of a beating heart from meters away. When hunting, they approach from the depths with bursts of speed exceeding 35 miles per hour, using surprise to deliver attacks with bite forces reaching up to 4,000 pounds per square inch. Anthony reacted instantly, but there was nowhere to run. The shark struck from directly below, covering the distance in a split second. He saw the shark's massive form just before impact. The attack was so powerful that both he and his surfboard were launched into the air. His screams cut through the morning silence as the shark's jaws clamped down on his torso. He fought desperately, punching at the predator's snout as it held him in its grip, its head shaking violently as razor-sharp teeth sliced through flesh and bone. The great white released him after several seconds, typical behavior when encountering unfamiliar prey. But the damage was catastrophic. Blood immediately clouded the pristine water. Despite his severe injuries, Anthony began paddling frantically toward shore on his damaged board. The shark circled below, following the blood trail, but keeping its distance, waiting to see if its prey would weaken. Anthony covered nearly half the distance to shore, his movements becoming weaker as blood loss and shock took over. A jogger on the beach heard his screams and called for help, but the remote location meant rescue was still minutes away. By the time lifeguards arrived, Anthony had disappeared beneath the surface, the ocean swallowing him whole. 2 hours later, his mangled surfboard washed ashore, bearing the unmistakable crescent-shaped bite marks of a great white shark. The gougers told the story of an encounter with one of nature's most efficient predators. His body was never recovered despite extensive search efforts. The university established a memorial scholarship in his name, and Surf Beach was temporarily closed while marine biologists studied great white activity in the area. The attack led to enhanced warning systems and additional safety briefings for surfers. As the sun set over the California coastline, the memory of Anthony White served as a stark reminder. I've spent years studying the ocean's most fearsome predators, but one attack in particular still haunts me. It wasn't the calculated strikes of a great white, but a brutal, relentless assault in the murky waters of Galveston Bay. The victim was a young charter captain named David Walter, a man living the American dream, and the attacker was a bull shark, one of the most adaptable and aggressive killers in the ocean. The morning of September 3, 2015, dawned with perfect fishing conditions. David, just 26, had taken 4 tourists from Dallas out on what he'd promised would be the fishing trip of their lives. He was a first-generation immigrant, a hard worker who'd built his business from the ground up. His clients loved his enthusiasm and his knack for finding fish. Friends knew him as methodical and safety-conscious, always double-checking his equipment, driven by a desire to create the perfect experience for his customers. These particular tourists were celebrating a bachelor party, and David had promised them action near the Galveston jetties. They'd spent the morning pulling in red snapper and speckled trout, the cooler steadily filling with their catch. David had taken them to his favorite spot, a mile offshore where the depth dropped to 25 feet, attracting bait fish and the predators that hunted them. The tourists were having a blast, already talking about booking another trip. But then disaster struck. The boat's engine coughed, sputtered, and died, leaving them drifting in the strong Gulf current toward the busy shipping channel. David quickly diagnosed the problem: a clogged fuel filter, usually a simple fix. But as he worked, the boat's anchor began dragging in the powerful current. The situation was becoming dangerous. Local charter captains had warned about unusual activity in the area recently, but such warnings were common in those waters. The water was murky from recent storms, making it harder to see what might be lurking beneath the surface. David had fished these waters for years without incident, reasoning that the popular fishing spot would be safe with other boats nearby. With his clients growing nervous, David made a fateful decision. He stripped down and dove overboard to manually reset the anchor, hoping to stabilize their position while he fixed the engine. He didn't know he was entering the hunting grounds of one of the Gulf's most dangerous predators, bull sharks. They're equally at home in saltwater and freshwater, possessing specialized kidneys that allow them to regulate salt levels. This means they can swim far up rivers and into freshwater lakes where other sharks can't survive. They can appear virtually anywhere there's water, from the open ocean to golf course ponds miles inland. Their aggressive temperament and willingness to investigate anything in their territory makes them responsible for more unprovoked attacks on humans than any other species except great whites. They have a bite force of 1,850 LEBs per square inch and electroreceptors that can detect electrical fields from meters away. They employ a relentless bite and release pattern, striking multiple times with the tenacity of a pit bull until their prey stops moving. David worked underwater, trying to free the stuck anchor, but the current was stronger than expected. The anchor was wedged in debris. A 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the fishing grounds for hours, drawn by the chum slick created by David's successful charter. The predator's incredibly acute senses detected the electrical fields generated by David's rapidly beating heart and the scent of blood from hundreds of yards away. What happened next occurred with shocking speed. David never saw the shark coming through the murky water. It struck from behind, its massive jaws clamping down on his leg with crushing force, before immediately releasing and circling for another attack. The impact was so violent that David's clients heard his muffled scream through the water. David fought desperately to reach the surface. But the bull shark continued its relentless assault. True to its species' aggressive nature, the predator struck again and again, each bite tearing away more flesh. Its persistence was terrifying. Once committed to an attack, bull sharks rarely give up, continuing until their prey stops moving. The multiple attacks created a feeding frenzy, and the murky water became a churning mass of blood and violence. David's clients watched in horror as the water around their boat turned red. They screamed for help and radioed the Coast Guard, but David had already disappeared beneath the surface, overwhelmed by the bull shark's relentless assault. The Coast Guard arrived nearly an hour later, finding only David's torn shorts floating in blood-stained water. The bull shark had vanished into the murky depths, leaving behind only traumatic memories for 4 witnesses. There's a chilling story they tell in boating safety courses along the Texas coast. It's about a charter business that vanished along with its owner, a man named David, after he disappeared into the Gulf. His body was never recovered. But thousands of miles away, in the clear waters of Hawaii, another predator was about to show why it had earned the most terrifying nickname in the ocean. And this time, it would happen under the cover of darkness, where even paradise becomes a hunting ground. The evening of April 22nd, 2016, brought perfect conditions to the remote coastline near Hana, Maui. A gentle trade wind rustled through the palm trees as the sun painted the sky in tropical colors. Christian Smith, 24, couldn't have asked for better conditions for his solo fishing adventure at one of his secret spots along Maui's untouched coastline. Christian embodied the laid-back Hawaiian lifestyle that drew so many to the islands. With his easy smile and encyclopedic knowledge of hidden fishing spots, he'd become a local favorite at the surf shop where he worked. Friends described him as fearless and independent, always venturing to remote locations that other anglers avoided, constantly searching for the perfect fishing experience that only the islands could provide. That evening, Christian loaded his truck with heavy tackle designed for the large predatory fish that hunted Hawaiian waters after dark. The location he'd chosen was breathtakingly beautiful, but completely isolated. A secluded beach accessible only by a rough dirt road winding through dense tropical vegetation. Christian arrived just as darkness was settling over the ocean. The spot was perfect. A protected cove with deep water close to shore, and a coral reef that attracted schools of bait fish during night hours. He set up his gear methodically, rigging the heavy equipment he'd need for the monsters that prowled these waters after sunset. As Christian waded into about 6 feet of crystal clear water to cast beyond the reef break, everything seemed perfect. The water was so clear he could see the white sand bottom, even in starlight. And he'd already landed 2 nice fish when disaster struck. Moving through the water to reposition for a better cast, Christian's foot slipped on wet volcanic rock. He fell hard against sharp coral formations, opening a deep gash on his leg. Blood immediately began streaming into the pristine water around him. Local Hawaiian fishermen had warned about increased predator activity during night hours, but Christian had fished these waters countless times. What he didn't know was that the remote location had become a hunting ground for one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. As Christian tried to assess his injury in the dim light, he realized the cut was deeper than expected. His splashing and the metallic scent of blood created the perfect storm of stimuli that trigger a predator's hunting instincts. Unknown to Christian, he had attracted the attention of Hawaii's apex predator. Tiger sharks are perfectly adapted for nighttime hunting in both shallow and deep waters, earning the nickname "wastebasket of the sea" because they'll eat virtually anything. Their stomachs have contained license plates, tires, and even other sharks. These massive sharks can grow up to 18 feet long and possess an indiscriminate appetite that makes them particularly deadly during nighttime hours when they move into shallow water to hunt. Tiger sharks can detect blood from several hundred yards away, and their lateral line system senses the slightest vibrations in the water, making escape nearly impossible once they lock onto a target. Christian began wading towards shore, but his movements became increasingly erratic as blood loss affected his coordination. The coral cut was more serious than he'd thought, and the metallic scent drifting through the water was like ringing a dinner bell for every predator in the area. The 10-foot tiger shark had been patrolling the reef edge when Christian's blood trail reached its sensitive nostrils. Unlike more cautious reef sharks, tiger sharks are known for their bold, reckless approach to anything in their territory, especially during nighttime hunting hours when they become most active. Christian never saw death coming through the dark water. The attack was sudden and devastating. The tiger shark struck from the side, its massive jaws clamping down on his injured leg with crushing force. The impact knocked Christian off his feet, sending him tumbling in the deeper water. The predator's attack was relentless and indiscriminate. Tiger sharks are known for their tenacious grip, often holding prey, while using their muscular bodies to roll and tear. The shark maintained its grip while striking with its powerful tail, creating a whirlpool of violence. What makes tiger shark attacks particularly horrific is their feeding behavior. Once they taste blood, they enter a feeding frenzy, biting repeatedly until prey stops moving. Christian fought desperately, but the predator's grip was unbreakable, and each movement only intensified the attack. In the darkness, I've seen firsthand how quickly the ocean can turn. Christian's screams on that remote beach. They echoed, but no one was there. A tiger shark, they said, its appetite indiscriminate. When morning came, his truck was there, his fishing gear on the beach. But Christian? Gone. The water that had given him so much had taken him. They found his body 4 days later, 8 miles away. The Hawaiian community, they held a traditional blessing. His surf shop colleagues created a memorial fund for ocean safety. But it wasn't just Hawaii. Off the rugged northern California coast, the same tiger sharks that likely took Anthony White were about to show everyone that even the most experienced watermen aren't safe. November 8th, 2017. Crisp autumn in Fort Ross, Northern California. The morning fog lifted, revealing that dramatic coastline. Pacific swells crashed against the sea stacks. For Ryan Walsh, 29, it was perfect diving weather. Calm seas, good visibility. A good day for harvesting abalone, those prized mollusks that fetch such high prices. Ryan, he embodied that dangerous profession of commercial abalone diving. 6 years in those frigid Pacific waters had weathered his hands and face. Free diving to depths that would terrify most recreational divers. He was methodical, safety-conscious, they said, but also driven, always searching for that perfect abalone bed hidden deep in the rocks. That morning, Ryan launched his small boat with Marcus, his dive partner, a younger diver who looked up to him. 3 seasons they'd worked together. That wordless communication that comes from shared danger in one of California's most hazardous jobs. Ryan chose a rocky reef in 25 feet of water. A challenging spot. Strong currents, kelp forests, and those ever-present abandoned fishing nets littering the bottom. As he suited up in his thick wetsuit, he felt that familiar mix of excitement and apprehension. The water was a bone-chilling 55 degrees, but he'd built up a tolerance over the years. He had his abalone iron, measuring gauge, and collection bag, the tools of his trade. The first few dives went perfectly. He descended through the kelp canopy to the rocky bottom, where those clusters of red abalone clung like living jewels. His experienced eye spotted the legal specimens, and his practiced hands pried them loose with surgical precision. But on his 7th dive, disaster struck. He was working to free a particularly large abalone when his fin became entangled in one of those abandoned fishing nets. That nearly invisible monofilament wrapped around his leg like a spider's web, holding him against the rocky bottom as his air ran dangerously low. He struggled, desperate. Finally, he cut through enough netting to break free. He made an emergency ascent, lungs burning as he fought through the kelp toward the sunlight. When he surfaced, he was exhausted, disoriented, and dangerously far from his boat. And he didn't realize his distressed movements had attracted the attention of California's apex predator. Great whites, living fossils that have patrolled these waters for millions of years, perfectly adapted to hunt in the kelp forests where seals and sea lions gather. Massive sharks, 12 to 16 feet long, weighing over 3,000 pounds. Their torpedo-shaped bodies can explode from the water at over 35 miles per hour. Their incredible sensory systems can detect electrical fields from meters away and track blood trails from 500 yards. During autumn, mature great whites patrol northern California in greater numbers, following the migration patterns of their prey. These sharks are incredibly intelligent. They can learn and adapt hunting strategies, making them unpredictable and extremely dangerous to anyone who ventures into their territory. Marcus, watching from 300 yards away, knew something was wrong. Ryan was floating motionless at the surface, clearly in distress. Marcus started the engine and raced toward him, but the distance seemed impossibly far. That 13-foot great white had been patrolling the kelp beds when it detected Ryan's emergency ascent. The shark's sensors picked up the electrical impulses from his rapidly beating heart, the scent of abalone in his collection bag, and those erratic movements of a creature in distress. All triggers, activating predatory instincts. Ryan never saw it coming. The great white struck from below with devastating force. Massive jaws clamping down on his torso with a bite force reaching 4,000 pounds per square inch, slicing through his wetsuit and into vital organs. The shark's initial bite was exploratory, typical great white behavior with unfamiliar prey. But the damage was already catastrophic. The predator released Ryan and circled back, following the blood. I've always been drawn to the stories where the ocean's beauty clashes with its unforgiving power. The story of Ryan's death, a shockwave through the abalone diving community, always stuck with me. He died from massive blood loss just 20 minutes after the shark attack, despite heroic efforts to save him. The Coast Guard helicopter arrived too late. Now, hundreds of miles south, in Florida's warmer waters, another encounter was brewing. This time, it was during a spearfishing competition, about to turn into a feeding frenzy in crystal clear water. Every horrific detail would be visible. August 14th, 2013, dawned with perfect conditions at Jupiter Inlet, Florida. The morning sun sparkled on the emerald Atlantic, gentle swells creating ideal visibility for the annual South Florida Spearfishing Tournament. Alex Paul, a 33-year-old construction foreman from Miami, couldn't have asked for better conditions. Alex embodied the passionate dedication of Florida's spearfishing community, spending weekends free diving, honing his breath-holding abilities, and perfecting his aim with spear guns. He wasn't a professional, but his natural athleticism and years of experience earned him respect. That morning, he joined 40 competitors at the tournament briefing. Target species included cobia, kingfish, and grouper. Alex had scouted extensively, identifying promising spots where large fish were likely found. The competition began at sunrise, boats spreading across the designated area. Alex and his dive buddy, Carlos, headed to a productive reef in 30 feet of water where bait fish schools attracted larger predatory species. The water was exceptionally clear, with 80-foot visibility. For 2 hours, Alex had moderate success with smaller fish. But as the morning progressed, he focused on finding a trophy fish. When he spotted a massive cobia cruising the reef edge, Alex knew he'd found his target. The cobia was magnificent, easily 50 pounds. Alex hyperventilated to extend his bottom time, then dove to intercept the fish's path. His shot was perfect, striking just behind the gills, but the wounded fish immediately took off for deeper water. In the excitement, Alex became separated from Carlos and the other divers, finding himself alone in an isolated reef section. The wounded cobia's struggle created a significant blood trail as Alex fought to control the powerful fish. When Alex finally surfaced with his prize, he was bleeding from cuts caused by sharp fins and exhausted from the underwater battle. The combination of fish blood and human blood, along with the struggles of the dying cobia, created perfect stimuli, triggering the predatory instincts of every shark in the vicinity. What Alex didn't realize was that he had attracted one of Florida's most dangerous predators, the bull shark. These powerful hunters typically reach 6 to 8 feet and can survive in both saltwater and freshwater. Their incredible sensory system allows them to detect vibrations from struggling fish hundreds of yards away and sense electrical fields from several meters distance. Unlike other shark species that may be more cautious around humans, bull sharks are known for their bold, direct approach to potential food sources, often competing directly with spear fishermen for their catch. Their aggressive nature and opportunistic feeding behavior, combined with their ability to strike repeatedly rather than bite once and retreat, makes them one of the most feared predators in American waters. A 7-foot bull shark had been patrolling the reef when the blood scent reached its nostrils from hundreds of yards away. The predator's acute senses detected electrical fields generated by both the struggling fish and Alex's rapidly beating heart. Alex saw the shark approaching and tried releasing his catch, hoping to distract the predator with the wounded cobia. But bull sharks are opportunistic feeders with insatiable appetites, and multiple potential prey items only intensified their aggressive behavior. The water turned crimson so quickly. I can only imagine the horror of that scene. A bull shark, they say, struck Alex directly. Massive jaws clamped down on his leg with crushing force. The attack, swift and brutal, severed major blood vessels. The predator's characteristic multiple strikes caused massive tissue damage. Alex, they say, fought desperately, punching at the shark's snout, trying to reach his dive knife. But the bull shark's aggressive nature meant a continued assault with relentless determination. It struck again and again until, as I said, the water turned crimson. Other tournament divers, alerted by the commotion and the spreading blood slick, raced toward Alex's location. They found him floating unconsciously, his spear gun and wounded cobia drifting nearby. The bull shark had vanished, leaving only devastating evidence of its attack. Despite immediate first aid and a Coast Guard helicopter evacuation, Alex died from massive blood loss during the 40-minute flight to the trauma center. The tournament was cancelled, and the spearfishing community mourned one of their most respected members. Alex's death, as so often happens in these tragedies, led to enhanced safety protocols at tournaments. New requirements mandated closer proximity to dive buddies, and organizers began providing emergency response training. The association established a memorial fund promoting safer diving practices.